What's going on, guys? Welcome back to #AskGSM here for Wednesday, May 17, 2023, episode 494. I am Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well and having a great week so far. If you want to send in a question to the show, you can do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the #AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Drop a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. Let's get right into it. Micah does it with the first YouTube question here. What is the best thing that has ever happened to you in your life so far? That is such a deep fucking question for this early on a Wednesday morning. Off the top of my head, it's got to be Alexis. I think that's the most obvious answer, and I'm not bullshitting when I say that. Definitely the best thing that ever happened to me up to this point. I mean, most people with kids would probably tell you, oh, the best thing that ever happened to me was having a kid or having kids or being a father, mother, whatever. I don't have kids, so I can't say that. Maybe my answer would be different if I have kids in the next 5, 10, 15 years, whatever the fuck it might be. Currently, it would be meeting Alexis and having her in my life would probably be the biggest answer that comes to mind. There's obviously a million different things I can say. A lot of different things I'm grateful for. That would be number one. His second question, should WWE have LA Knight start a feud with Edge going into the summer? I'm hearing a rumor that they want LA Knight and Rick Boogs to be a tag team. I mean, that's not just a rumor. They're literally doing the tag team match on SmackDown this week, Knight and Boogs against the Profits. Now, why the fuck would they do that unless they were doing some sort of a storyline where Knight and Boogs are a tag team, or I've heard it was temporary. Like, I put out this tweet last weekend when I saw the match set up for SmackDown on the SmackDown Lowdown last weekend. Listen, I got responses from people because I'm just kind of like befuddled, like that they're even doing this shit. And I got responses from people, not like shitting on me or whatever, but people just saying, it's only temporary, blah, blah. Well, let's fucking see. I mean, listen, it has been 6 months of this bullshit with LA Knight where they clearly do not know what to do with him. And I'm kind of done giving WWE the benefit of the doubt at this point with LA Knight. Because I was one of those people a couple of months ago where I was like, oh, it's fine that they're not putting him in a match at WrestleMania because obviously he'll make an appearance and he'll do something notable. He wasn't even on the fucking show. Okay, coming out of WrestleMania, they're not doing that. Okay, I get it now. It's because they're going to do something with him, important with him coming out of WrestleMania. Nothing. He lost to Xavier Woods and probably one or two other matches. I don't know. He actually beat Butch on SmackDown at the draft show. Again, nothing. Went nowhere. Amounted to nothing. So I really don't have the patience at this point. People are saying, oh, it's temporary before they put him in the Money in the Bank ladder match and he wins. I'm not saying he won't win, but I'm losing more and more confidence in that prediction by the week. I mean, you really think they're going to put the fucking briefcase on a guy that's barely on the show? I know you could say, oh, Baron Corbin won the briefcase, or Damian Sandow won the briefcase, or this guy. That's because they were all being pushed at that point. All the people that you might consider, oh, they're losers, why would they win the briefcase? Even fucking Otis 2 or 3 years ago when he won it, was in the midst of a push coming out of WrestleMania. LA Knight is not. It is very rare that they take someone. It's not uncommon for someone to win the briefcase and then for them to do nothing and then cash in successfully, unsuccessfully. That happens all the time. But everyone who has typically won the briefcase is clearly someone that they either have plans for or had major main event plans for at some point before they either lost interest or actually followed through on that. LA Knight currently does not stand out as that guy to me. He should be that guy. He should win the briefcase. He should be in the main event level. But, I mean, even PW Insider, and they're usually pretty on point with this sort of stuff. They had reported a couple days ago the hierarchy, so to speak, of heels on SmackDown. LA Knight was like fucking 5. I think he might have been below Karrion Kross. He may have been. I think Grayson Waller was 6. LA Knight was, I mean, take this with a grain of salt again, but and it's always subject to change because Karrion Kross was like 2 at one point last summer, and he never felt like the number 2 heel on SmackDown. But I think it's Roman Reigns, Solo Sikoa, Austin Theory, Karrion Kross, LA Knight, and then Grayson Waller. I mean, I like all those guys, but LA Knight should be number 3. Honestly, I even like Austin Theory a lot, but I think LA Knight is far more over than fucking Austin Theory at this point. He's the guy that should be higher up in the card than Kross, Theory, or Waller currently at the moment. Even Solo Sikoa, I kind of group Sikoa with Roman, but I could see why they would even put him on that list because he's all over the shows. He wrestles a lot. I get it. That doesn't give me a lot of encouragement that they have significant plans for LA Knight. So we'll see where this thing goes. Listen, maybe it turns out to be wildly entertaining. Maybe they play off each other exceptionally well. I just don't think it's necessary to have him waste time in a storyline with Rick fucking Boogs. And I like Rick Boogs. I honestly didn't even really mind the stuff that he was doing with Elias whenever we would see it on Raw. They did a lot of stuff on like the WWE YouTube channel and on the social media stuff and whatever. I enjoyed all of that stuff. I wish we would see more of that on Raw. But I just feel like to put LA Knight of all people in the spot like that is a complete fucking waste because the guy could and should be doing more. You have AJ Styles. You have Bobby Lashley. You have Edge. All on SmackDown doing nothing. AJ's going to fight for the World Championship at Crown Jewel, or rather Night of Champions. He's probably losing that match. So if he's losing that match, he's another babyface that's open and free. Rey Mysterio. Those are 4 top-tier babyfaces that LA Knight, any one of them, he could be feuding with right now or coming out of Night of Champions, and I highly doubt that'll be the case. Could this turn into LA Knight? Could this turn him into a babyface and make him a breakout babyface on the brand? Sure, but again, I don't see him getting above in the pecking order over Bobby, AJ, Edge when he's around, even Rey Mysterio. So I just don't get it. I'm not going to be one of those people, and sometimes I am. Most of the time I am, actually, where I say, listen, it's not that big of a deal. We'll see where it goes. Let it play out, pal. No, I didn't. I just think it's a fucking waste of time. I really do. I feel like people really want to rally behind LA Knight. He's never really on SmackDown. That doesn't make any sense to me. He should have been on Raw, honestly, and been a top heel over there, but whatever. Now is the time to push him to the top of the card and use him in a meaningful role on the show, not in tag team bullshit when Raw and SmackDown already have enough teams they're not doing enough with. His third question here, if you could have any car in the world to be your car to drive daily, what car would you get? Another non-wrestling related question, not exactly as deep as the opener here, but honestly, I'm not exactly a car guy. I really don't care about like, oh, I need this car, I need that car. Whatever has a set of wheels and it can get me from point A to point B without any problems is the car that I will drive. I have driven a Jeep I have had and owned and driven a Jeep Compass and a Ford Escape, and I really liked both cars. I love the Ford Escape that I have now. So, I mean, I never really wanted to go beyond a Jeep Compass, but the Ford Escape just was an option, and I was like, why not? If it's similar enough to the Jeep Compass, why the fuck not? It's not like a drastically different car. I like SUVs. I feel comfortable in that. I don't need like a... I literally know nothing about cars. Lamborghini, I'm not saying I want that, but I'm just saying like, oh, someone might say a Lamborghini or a this or a that or a... what's even the nicest? A Mustang, I guess? I don't know. I wouldn't want to drive any of that shit out of fear that I would wreck it or damage it, and really just because I have no interest, and that probably wouldn't be comfortable for me anyway. So I'll just stick with the Ford Escape or the Jeep Compass. Any Jeeps, Fords, I typically like those SUV-esque cars. I won't really deviate outside of what I've already have driven up to this point and what I currently have. His fourth question, do you think WWE will do Jimmy Uso versus Roman Reigns at Money in the Bank for a one-off match, or do the Usos versus Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa in a tag team match, and which one of those two matches would you be most interested in? It's a good question. Of those two, probably Usos versus Reigns and Sikoa, because the Usos are so established as a tag team. Like, if you said Jay and Roman, we've seen it multiple times already, but they have to go back to that at some point. Jimmy and Roman is something new, but Jimmy has never really been established on his own. You could do Jimmy and Roman as well in the build-up to the second matchup. I just feel like as a pay-per-view match, like Jimmy is Jimmy really going to win the championship? Jay could. I don't think he will. I don't think he should. Does Jay have a shot? Not really. I don't think. Currently, no. You could do that match on SmackDown maybe if Roman bothers to work SmackDown. But I think the Usos versus Roman and Sikoa is the real draw there. Because the Usos, I mean, they held the fucking tag titles for almost 2 years. They're one of the greatest tag teams in WWE history. I'm not putting them at number one, don't worry. But, like, they have the accolades. They're a threat to Roman and Sikoa as a team. We're seeing Roman and Sikoa team up for a reason and Night of Champions, which I'm not in full favor of. I'll get to that later. But I feel like that would be the real draw there. And I've said this before, but maybe you could do Usos and Roman, Usos versus Roman and Sikoa at Money in the Bank, like you said, and then build a Roman and Jay at SummerSlam. Now, honestly, in an ideal world, I would have Cody be traded to SmackDown in favor of, or in return for, like, AJ Styles and the OC or whatever. I feel like that would be fair. And then we get Roman and Cody at SummerSlam, get that shit over with, have Cody win the championship, and move the fuck on. I have the feeling, and I've said this since WrestleMania, I don't think they're doing Roman and Cody 2. I feel like they are going to get to it at some point. We're not going to get to it at SummerSlam. I feel like they are going to wait till WrestleMania. I'm not in favor of that at all, don't get me wrong. I just feel like it's either SummerSlam or Mania, and they're not going to do it at any other point in between. And they probably shouldn't, but they really should get it out of the way at SummerSlam, just to take the belt off. I mean, he really should have fucking lost at WrestleMania 39. I will say that every single week here on the show until the day I die. But even still, of the two options, I would prefer Mania's a bigger stage, but SummerSlam is just sooner. I really don't want Roman as another part-time champion for another fucking 10 or 11 months. I feel like that's ridiculous. They're probably going to do that, though, and extend the reign even longer. And we're going to have Roman. I'm not saying we are getting Roman and Jay at SummerSlam. I'm just saying it's a possibility. And I feel like that's one way to get to it, is by doing the Usos versus Roman and Sikoa at Money in the Bank. Regardless of who wins, you set up Jay versus Roman at SummerSlam. And what I don't like about that is that Jay would have to lose if the championship's on the line. I mean, it doesn't have to, but I wouldn't put the belts on Jey Uso personally. That being said, with Jay, that's a match you can do after Roman loses the championship. This is the direction I wanted them to go in after Roman dropped the belts at WrestleMania. And you still could have done Jay and Roman at SummerSlam, and Jay could have fucking won. But now that Roman's still champion, that kind of eliminates that possibility, or at least decreases it significantly. So that's what I would like to see. Central Man Network from YouTube, who should be the one to beat Jamie Hayter for the AEW Women's Championship. I'm going to be completely honest. Looking at the women's division in AEW, there's a lot of talented women. They have a really good women's division and a lot of women at that. None of them stand out as someone who I would like to see beat Jamie Hayter for that championship, at least not currently. It's probably because they've done nothing to build anyone up as the threat to the championship aside from the Outcasts, kind of, who only ever really beat, like, the Willows and the Rihos and the Sky Blues. Okay, cool. They never really win the matches that actually matter. Saraya as champion, I like Saraya. I just don't think she's the right fit as champion. Just because I haven't really seen anything out of her since she's been back that really has stood out to me as special, either on the mic or in the ring specifically. Jamie Hayter, although not that she's been an afterthought as champion, the belt has been in the back seat because they really want to tell the story of the AEW Originals and the Outcast, which has been dragging on for a while. I kind of just don't really care at this point. They have a lot of talented women in the storyline. The storyline itself is just kind of very one-dimensional to me. Not a lot of layers there, in my personal opinion. That being said, I just don't think, at least Jamie Hayter is someone that can go in there and have a banger of a match. I don't see Saraya having that sort of run in her. Could she win it and then lose it at like Wembley or something? I guess. It'll honestly probably be Saraya. If I had to choose, like, obviously there's Chris Statlander. Chris Statlander, at this point, I don't know when she's due back. If Jade Cargill is still fucking champion right now, and she is, and she's been champion forever, and I like Jade, but it's grown so tiresome. At this point, you may as well wait until she's back to have her beat Jade. So if Chris is busy with Jade, I would ask, who does that leave? That leaves a lot of women on the roster. The issue is that none of them have been built up enough, and no one really interests me as like, okay, this is the person I want to see with the championship. Toni Storm already had her run. Just Thunder Rosa coming back and beat Jamie Hayter for the belt that she never lost? Maybe, but Rose's first reign wasn't overly great anyway either. So, I mean, I guess I could put the belt back on her, although I heard that she may not be back for a while anyway, although she was on the show last week. She's not going to be cleared for a while, so I'm not exactly sure. Looking at the roster, the one name that I would like to see get a run is Ruby Soho. She's been fucked over so many times. She's gotten so many major opportunities on this show, specifically in AEW, WWE as well. She's had like 1 million title shots and 1 million different titles and hasn't won a single fucking one. And she's not the leader of the Outcasts. I mean, I would say Saraya is, but they're kind of being portrayed as like equals and whatever, or at least they're attempting to do that. She's someone I would rather see win the belt because she could have better matches, be the focal point of the group. I mean, Britt Baker is really at the forefront of this feud with the Outcasts, and yet Jamie Hayter is the champion. I don't want to see Britt Baker turn on Jamie to win the championship. That'd be terrible. They should split at some point, but Britt shouldn't be the one to beat her for the belt. That would be very dumb, I think. Of the 3 Outcasts, Toni already had her run. Saraya, this doesn't really interest me. Ruby Soho getting a run would be cool. She already had her shot. I think was she pinned? I don't remember. She had her shot at Revolution in that triple threat I think with Tony. Was Saraya? I think Saraya was in the match. I don't really remember. It was a good match from what I can recall. Ruby Soho lost, but it would be cool if they built a Jamie and Ruby one-on-one and Ruby won the belt. That I'd be in favor of. Anything else doesn't really interest me as much. So I'm not really sure who's going to be the one to take the championship from her, honestly. Emmanuel has got a couple of questions here. First one being, also from YouTube, is AEW Double or Nothing 2023 shaping up to be a filler show? Currently, yeah, for a big pay-per-view, and you can't really say that any of their shows aren't big pay-per-views because they only have 4 or 5 a year. They're going to have, 6 this year between Revolution, Double or Nothing, All Out, All In. They are doing both, Forbidden Door, and Full Gear. This is probably going to be one of the more forgettable ones in recent memory. And I'll give the short version of it here, because we talked about the ticket situation, the ticket situation last week, and why aren't they selling more tickets? It's like the attendance is half of what it was last year, which is not fucking good. I had a lot of discussion about that on Twitter the other day. As far as the card itself and them not announcing anything, so, I mean, they have 2 matches confirmed, and the pay-per-view is next weekend. Obviously, Dynamite is tonight. Obviously, they will add more matches. No fucking shit. They'll probably have upwards of 8 or 9 matches. Like last year, they had 15 or some dumb shit like that, including the pre-show. That is ridiculous. AEW needs to do a better job of not doing that. I don't think they did that with Revolution. It ended up being a better show as a result. If you want to have 4-hour shows, that's fine, I guess, because they only have 4 or 5 shows a year. Whatever. I prefer the shorter shows, but if you want to have a 4-hour show, that's fine too. Or a 3.5-hour show might be more tolerable, in my opinion, as opposed to having to go from 8 to 12 on a fucking Sunday. But anyway, I think this card has potential. I mean, I'm looking forward to the 4 Pillars matchup. That is the match to do. It's just not a marquee match. I'm sure they're going to do the Elite and Blackpool Combat Club. I'm sure that's going to be announced tonight. Wardlow and Christian Cage is another one. It's just not a show in a women's title match as well, or a women's tag team match. I don't know. Based, or at least compared to other AEW pay-per-views, this does absolutely feel like a filler show. 100,000%. Again, it'll probably end up being a very good show. I'm not looking forward to it. I am looking forward to Double or Nothing. They constantly wait until the last minute to confirm the card, so I'm not saying that's the issue here. But even what they've teased, I mean, I am looking forward to the top matches. Like the 4 Pillars match sounds cool. The Elite and Blackpool Combat Club, regardless, I mean, if it's Anarchy in the arena, I think that shit is just fucking terrible. That's probably what it's going to end up being, because that's what Jon Moxley does. I think that shit is fucking awful, personally. Any combination of that, for the most part, I'm looking forward to. I am digging the feud right now. I like the storytelling there. There's just not a lot of other exciting storylines going on right now in AEW to warrant me getting overly excited about this show. I always look forward to their pay-per-views. They're always typically pretty good. But there's been nothing really lately that's all right, I need to watch the show for this. Adam Cole and Chris Jericho are obviously on a collision course for the show. That should be a fun matchup. So again, the card has potential. It's just that the build of the show has been so fucking, I don't want to even say lazy. It's just not overly exciting. It kind of feels like their sights are set on All In and even Forbidden Door, and not so much Double or Nothing. Even the Owen Hart Cup coming up in June and July or whatever. It feels like they're more focused on that than they are this show, which is why the build has been so lackluster. Again, I'm looking forward to the show, but does it feel like a filler show? Absolutely. At least compared to the other AEW pay-per-views. In the grand scheme of things, it'll probably end up being a fun show. Just compared to other AEW shows they've done in the last year or so, it does feel like a filler pay-per-view for them to get from point A to point B, just to kind of get through it. Let's see. His next question here. Did Karrion Kross's feud with Drew McIntyre fail? Kross used to be teased as a potential threat to Roman Reigns, but he hasn't really gotten over as an upper-tier talent despite his consistent TV time. Arguably, it's because he hasn't had a definitive feud yet. His past 3 storylines were mini-feuds with Madcap Moss, Rey Mysterio, and Shinsuke Nakamura, of which he won 2 out of the 3 of them, and his biggest win was background noise to Rey and Dominic. I asked if the McIntyre feud failed because it seemed like that the feud was supposed to make Kross special already. 100% it failed. And listen, I didn't even really mind the feud. I thought it was a good feud. The matches were good. But you can't really tell in the moment, all right, this feud was a success, or it was great, or it was awful. You kind of need to give it time as far as when it initially ends. It ended 6 months ago. I think it's safe to say now, 6 months later, that feud was a failure. Because it was kind of meant to put Cross in a prominent position from the get-go, with the top name on the show, that was going to contend and then just failed to win the Undisputed World Championship at Crown Jewel in Drew McIntyre. That's a big name. He was the biggest babyface on SmackDown to that point. And he ended up beating him in their first match at Extreme Rules, lost the rematch at Crown Jewel, whatever, not that big of a deal. The follow-up sucked. And the weird thing with Cross, and he's in such a weird position, I've said this for months now, he's not really that over at all, like you said. I agree with that. The problem is, like you said, is that he hasn't really had a definitive feud yet. Has he really even been on pay-per-view? I mean, I think he was in the Rumble, got tossed out like a fucking loser. The Rey Mysterio win, like you said, he didn't really win the Rey feud. I mean, he did by beating Rey, although Dominic kind of got involved, and he wasn't really the focus. I don't think Cross has had another match on pay-per-view since the Crown Jewel match with Drew McIntyre. He wasn't at Survivor Series. He was at the Rumble, in the Rumble match as a complete afterthought. He wasn't at Elimination Chamber. He didn't even have a match at WrestleMania. And he's supposed to be like one of the biggest heels on SmackDown. He wasn't even at WrestleMania. I mean, what does that tell you? He wasn't at Backlash. So, like, he's had stuff going on, like you said, but nothing overly exciting. He lost the Nakamura feud, the Madcap Moss feud. No one even remembers or gave a shit that happened. Because, again, he's in a weird spot because he's someone that they seem to like to protect. Although he's lost a fair amount since he's been back. It's not like he's only lost one match. He lost to Drew McIntyre at Crown Jewel. I don't think he got pinned. McIntyre may have left the cage, but he lost that match. He lost to Rey Mysterio on SmackDown. Their first match, he lost clean. He failed to become number one contender to the Intercontinental Championship. He may have been pinned in that match. I don't remember. Who else has he lost to? I could have sworn he lost another match in the last couple of, or he lost to Nakamura recently. I thought he lost another match in addition to that. I don't know, but they want to protect him. They just don't do a great job of either protecting him or giving him wins that matter. And I like Cross a lot. I really like the promos. I like the presentation. In the ring, he's not the flashiest guy, but I feel like a guy like him can be a top heel on the show or a top star on the show if he was in a definitive feud and was able to get heat consistently. I think he did during the Drew feud early on because he attacked him so often every single week and Drew was over. So that was like the perfect combination. And like, same thing with Rey. Like, Rey's obviously over. He could have really benefited from that. The issue was that it wasn't really progressed on television all that much. You say consistent television time. Consistent is kind of a loose word there. Cross will be gone from TV for like 2 to 3 weeks. He's not really on the show. He will not get heat from vignettes. Let's put it that way. The vignettes help a lot, I think. But in order to get him heat as a heel, he needs to be out there either winning meaningful matches in like a fashion in which people will boo him and not just sit on their hands, or beating up baby faces that matter. And he really hasn't done any of that. Like, did he attack Shinsuke Nakamura following their, during their feud? Not really. I don't think they had any other interaction aside from that one match. They may have, interacted in promos and in backstage segments, but not really in the ring in front of a crowd where he could draw heat for attacking someone as over Shinsuke Nakamura. And then he lost anyway. It's not even like he won and people were upset and they booed him. No, he lost anyway. So I like Cross. I don't want to say he's damaged goods. They shouldn't fire him. People saying, oh, Vince was right to fire him are fucking dumb. I mean, it doesn't prove that Vince was right. Vince never even gave him the chance to get over. But it's not like Karrion Kross so far has had a championship put on him, or he's been booked strong, and people just don't care. I'm not saying it's entirely WWE's fault. It's just a matter of circumstance, and, Kross isn't really the flashiest guy. Again, he's not going to get over. He has a very different gimmick than everyone else, so maybe he won't ultimately succeed in WWE. But, what he's doing now is better than what he was doing when he was here the last time. That's not even a question. Vince literally brought him up and put him in a fucking mask from day. He lost his debut in 90 fucking seconds. He was doomed from the moment they debuted him on the fucking show. And I had people on that day telling me, it's not that big of a deal. He'll be fine. What fucking show were you watching, pal? Seriously. Oh my god, just people can be so fucking dumb. But anyway, with Kross, I do feel like he can bounce back. He just needs the right feud and needs to be booked better. Again, I'm not saying he's going to be the biggest heel on the show, but I feel like he can be doing more than what he's doing right now. And consistent is a really loose term there because he's not really on the show all that consistently. He has a 30-second promo backstage. That's cool. He doesn't really wrestle all that often, and that's fine, but he's not really out there getting the heat. Like certain people, like Solo Sikoa is out there getting the fucking heat. I mean, he's out there beating people up and winning matches. Cheap or not, he's winning the matches, and people just do not like Solo because he's almost to the point where he's being shoved down our throats, but still, they're doing a great job of putting heat on Solo. Why can't they do something similar with Cross or almost any, like Bronson Reed? Bronson was doing a good job of getting over in the feud with Bobby until they split him up in the draft. And now Bronson is back to doing nothing, which is a bummer. But anyway, moving on. His third question here. Do you think it's important for wrestlers to get better at promos? Jungle Boy Jack Perry had an interview recently where he said promos aren't his favorite, and he'll, in quotes, never be like MJF and request 30 minutes to blabber on, end quote. I actually looked up the interview for more context, and he does elaborate that he likes to, quote, improve a little each time, end quote, and that he personally doesn't like baby faces who come off as cocky, so he prefers to go the other way, even if it makes him come off as quiet or as under the radar. Yeah, I mean, first of all, people always have to look into the actual interviews and not just go off of headlines. I've been guilty of that as well, but, I mean, typically, a lot of these this is just news in general. They'll grab the juiciest headline, like the Adam Page thing, and Adam Page was pretty dumb for what he said about a year or two ago, about, like, oh, I don't take advice. I mean, it sounded better when you actually listened to the interview. It was still a pretty dumb thing to say. But, like, the Jungle Boy thing as well, it kind of sounds like when you read the headline, he doesn't care about improving the promos. He just knows that he doesn't want to be MJF and talk forever. But like you said, when you look at the extra context, he kind of explains, I don't want to be a babyface for 30 minutes. He recognizes, or who talked for 30 minutes, he recognizes he will never be MJF on the mic. And he never will be. I kind of respect that honesty. I appreciate the bluntness of that statement. He will never be MJF on the microphone. But that doesn't mean he can't get better. I don't think his promos are completely fucking terrible. His promos are better now than they were a year or two ago, obviously. Are they where they're supposed to be for a main event level performer? No. But he's not at that level yet anyway. Is he competing for the championship at Double or Nothing? Yeah. In a 4 Pillars match that doesn't really feel as special as it should, but I'm looking forward to the match. He has improved a lot. And if he can continue to improve, like he said, a little each time, and I think he has shown great improvement, specifically in the last 2 years, that's key. And he's not just having Christian talk for him or Luchasaurus or whatever, who just doesn't talk at all at this point. That's key. So I appreciate the honesty there of his statement. He's 100% right. He needs to continue to improve each time, but also not be a babyface that talks a lot. And he needs to get the reps in, otherwise he won't improve. But to answer the core question there in your paragraph, is it important for wrestlers to get better at promos? Is the sky blue? I mean, that's a pretty obvious answer. His next question, do you think John Cena and Randy Orton will retire soon? I know I asked about John Cena a few months ago, but he had an interview recently where he said that his body can't handle wrestling anymore. And what he has is, quote, what you saw at WrestleMania 39. Randy Orton's father, Bob Orton, revealed in an interview recently that Randy is training, but the doctors have apparently told him not to return to wrestling. I know that's his father, but I mean, listen, a lot of these wrestlers, specifically Bob fucking Orton, who came up 30, 40 years ago, are workers at heart. So even if he was going to be back next week, I don't think Bob would say that. They might be planting the seed of doubt that Randy will ever be back. He will be back. Am I saying that he's lying? No, because I think he also may be telling the truth. We don't know how severe Randy's injury is. We really don't. He also could be exaggerating, though. They may have told him, listen, you may not be able to do this for much longer. His translation of that, Bob's translation of that might have been, well, they're telling you to, wrap it up, like now. Like, you got to retire. Again, maybe they're right. Maybe he does have to retire now, and Orton's kind of not listening to them, and he's coming back anyway. We don't know how bad the injury is, because it really hasn't been made public yet, and it's been a year. I just want him to be better and come back healthy, or at least as healthy as he can. Well, your question really was, do you think John Cena and Randy will retire soon? Will retire or should retire? The answer to both is no. Do I think Cena will retire soon? Like, what's your definition of soon? I think Cena will be back for a number of more matches. I would say in the next 2 to 3 years, in my own opinion. Will Cena still be wrestling in 5 years? Probably not. Probably not. what I saw at Mania, if that's true, I saw him say that as far as like what we saw at Mania is what you get from him at this point. That's kind of sad, and not in like a shameful way, but sad in the sense that like the days of Big Match John are over. Like he really had the peak of his in-ring career from, I would say, 2015. He had a lot of great matches before that, obviously, but like 2015 with the U.S. Open Challenge, 2016 with AJ Styles. Like after that, he was having not amazing matches, but pretty decent matches in 2017, 2018, and that was kind of it. 2019, he wasn't really around at all. And then ever since he's come back, he did like the cinematic match with Bray Wyatt. Not really much of a match. He did the Theory match, which was like his first major single. Like the SmackDown Tag Team match where he came back for, he didn't really do much at all. And then the match at Mania wasn't really much of anything. He was just really him going through the motion. So if that is the best that Cena can have at this point, that's definitely depressing that the days of Big Match John are over, but it was going to come at some point. So I could see him officially wrapping it up within the next 5 years, definitely. I think he does have a little bit more left in the tank as far as matches, even as a basic John Cena match. His matches aren't terrible. Like he's not out there embarrassing himself like Hogan or Ric Flair in TNA 10 years ago. You know, like I think Cena could do a little bit more. Like even if it's at that level, he can do a couple of more matches in my opinion. Orton I could see being around for another 5 years. At least. I mean, the guy's still relatively young. He's not 50. I think he's early 40s is Orton. He could do this for another, I think he's early 40s. Probably for another 5 years. I don't want to say max. Because these guys can always come back as part-timers, and Cena already is a part-timer, but like, do one match a year, do one match every couple years. That might be the case with Orton. I think neither of them, again, what's your definition of soon? In the next a year or two? Probably not, I don't think. I could see them being done within the next 5 years. I feel like that's inevitable, specifically for Cena, if what we got at Mania is what he has at this point. At Kyle Rochelle from Twitter, Kyle Rochelle 19 specifically, your question was, how do you feel about Becky Lynch's promos when she's in a feud? With her feud with Trish, I feel that Becky's promo got me more excited to see the match than Trish did. Is it because every time Becky's in a program, she makes the feud interesting? I think Becky's promos are great. For the most part. Becky's promo on Monday was definitely the highlight of the feud so far. And I was looking forward to the feud. I'm not saying the feud's been a failure. I'm not one of those people that's going to say, oh, it's either amazing or it's awful. You can have feuds that are in between, which is what this has been so far. Nothing overly exciting. It was a lot better than Trish's promo. I'll just put it that way. Becky's promos, either as a babyface or even as a heel, have largely been very strong since 2018, 2019. She's done a great job of that. In either role, she thrives. And she also brings the best out of her opponents and rivals as well. I think Monday was pure proof of that. Becky can be really, really good when she's fired up. She has the right material. Again, this hasn't been the most amazing feud of all time. But I agree, she got me more interested in the match with her promo than anything Trish did up to this point. And that's not to say what Trish did was terrible. I didn't really mind her promos as much as most people. I just thought Becky's promo specifically on Monday was significantly stronger and that much better. At noob_n_co-tv, what are your thoughts on Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa challenging for the undisputed tag team titles? To me, this doesn't make any sense. If he wins, the tag titles are going to be impossible to take off of Roman at this point. I'm not a fan of it. I am not going to go on a massive tangent about this, a massive rant. I already kind of did in my SmackDown audio review last weekend, so for more on that, check that out. I also discussed in my Raw and SmackDown reviews from the last couple of days. I'm not a fan of it because I feel like largely the biggest issue with this is this, in my opinion. It's the 1,000th day of Roman Reigns' championship run, of his Universal title run specifically. Why the fuck would he not defend the championship on that show? Like, I know they're doing the tag team title thing. And Zane's promo, going off with the Becky thing that Kyle was just talking about, Zane's promo on Monday got me more excited for the match than it was previously. But I'm so done with Sami and KO versus Roman and the Bloodline. Like, move the fuck on. It's over. It's time to move on. You can do stuff with the Bloodline on SmackDown, and even that's kind of wearing thin. But involving Owens and Zane specifically, we need to move the fuck on. It's taken forever. It peaked at Mania. The follow-up Backlash was fine. Anything beyond that is overkill, and that's exactly what this is. the match should be great, don't get me wrong. And there is a chance Roman and Solo could win, which would be terrible. I don't think he is. My prediction is that Owens and Zane will win with interference or inadvertent interference from the Usos likely, which would make the most sense. I just have Roman defend the title. And the argument, well, he wasn't going to lose anyway. Is he not going to fucking defend it until he loses it? That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Roman going from April to July without defending one or both of his titles, whatever, is insanely stupid. It's the longest that he's gone so far without defending the championship. It is very dumb. I do not like that at all. I don't. I think they could have built up Bobby or AJ. And that's another thing, too. People were saying, it's not enough time to build up someone. First of all, you knew Roman wasn't going to be here since the night after WrestleMania. You could have built up anyone in the last month and a half to feel like a threat to Roman. Would they have won? No. But most people don't. Just because Logan Paul wasn't that much of a threat, do you not do the match? No, the match, we all had our issues with how the match came about, but the match ended up being great. Not only that, but it was a draw. Logan Paul is a draw. So Logan and Roman was a draw for that Crown Jewel show. I think Roman and AJ, it's not like you're putting Roman in there with a fucking Akira Tozawa. Roman and AJ or Roman and Bobby would have been draws for that show. And you don't have to involve the tag team titles. Or, if you're going to do this shit, you have Roman lose at WrestleMania. I said that earlier. You can have Roman lose at WrestleMania, and this all still makes sense. But they didn't do that. What's done is done, so whatever. I am intrigued to see where they go with this and where it goes. Don't get me wrong. I just think involving Zane and Owens specifically, it's just so fucking done to death at this point. I don't care. It's silly for Roman to be getting a tag team title shot. It's very dumb. It's very dumb. It's just not necessary, I don't think. The next question, also from Noob. What is going on to the women's division as of late? We've got Bianca Belair on SmackDown as the Raw Women's Champion, Rhea Ripley on Raw as the SmackDown Women's Champion. Is Triple H's booking of the women's division been worse than Vince McMahon's booking of the women's division? The answer is yes. I don't want to say it's at an all-time terrible low for the women's division. I just feel like, honestly, the women's division, when Vince was in charge, whether it's a Vince Triple H thing or whatever, and I'm not even saying this is objectively true, but in my opinion, since Triple H took over, not that he's done all bad stuff, like Rhea and Bianca specifically have shined, but they were already shining under Vince for the most part. Rhea Ripley is at another level compared to where she was under Vince. She was kind of like a henchman in the Judgment Day, and not doing a whole lot else beyond that on her own prior to that point. But Bianca was already shining. Becky felt more special than she does right now. Sasha and Naomi walked out under Vince's watch, but they also didn't come back to Triple H either. And the women's tag team division, at least, you know what? The women's tag team division it's doing, marginally better now. At least Vince had enough, thought to get rid of the fucking belts and not bring them back until Triple H did that. And they don't really serve much of a purpose. They should have kept them dead, buried, and in the trash. They just don't serve much of a purpose. Raquel is not interesting. I like Liv. They finally kind of gave her single spotlight when at the tail end of Vince's run. And then Triple H takes over, and then her run kind of got lost in the shuffle. It's kind of my take on that. He's brought back a lot of women. Candice, Michin, Tegan, Emma. None of them have done anything. They're just kind of there to add depth to the show, and I feel like some of those women can be doing more. Chelsea Green being another one, although she's been entertaining. She's been on the show a fair amount. I don't know, man. It's just one of those things where the division isn't bad on either brand. It's just not as strong as it was. So honestly, so far, yeah, I would say Vince's booking of the women's division before Triple H took over was better than it is right now. There's just not a lot of interesting stories. Becky and Trish is one thing. That's nice. We need more beyond that. It's not awful right now, but like Natalya and Rhea, like no one feels either interesting or over. And that's the problem. I'm not saying that Vince was the best women's wrestling booker in the world. It was just they were doing better stuff when he was in charge, honestly. The feuds were more interesting. Charlotte and Rhea had a very lame feud going into WrestleMania. They had a killer match, but the feud sucked. Asuka and Rhea as a feud sucked. Would it have been that much better under Vince? Probably not. But I don't know. Just compared to what we got this year going into Mania. Even compared to last year, Ronda and Charlotte wasn't overly great. But the build to Bianca and Becky, I thought was better than what we got for Asuka and Bianca this year, or even Rhea and Charlotte. I don't know, man. It's weird. As far as with the women's championships, I still have no idea. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago. To me, if they were going to do a belt swap, they would have done it by now. So the plus side is that they're not doing a belt swap. But then what are they going to do? Are they going to wait for a unification match? I wouldn't do that. I've said that before. Are they going to redesign or retheme the championships and rename and rebrand the belts? Yeah, probably, but like how quickly is that coming? Because right now it's very weird that we have the SmackDown Women's Champion on Raw and vice versa. And they haven't really addressed it yet either. They haven't said, a solution will be, announced soon. Like, they haven't said anything. They haven't said jack shit. So that's not good. They need to figure that out and figure it out fast because that shit just doesn't make any sense at all. Although this company doesn't do a great job, Triple H, Vince, doesn't matter. They don't do a great job of explaining stuff. That's one of their biggest issues and why certain stuff just does not make sense or it's hard to take seriously. At Ewagu91 from Twitter, Gunther is going to be positioned as the top heel on Raw. Your thoughts on that? Good. Listen, the guy deserves it. He's awesome. He's had an amazing first year on the main roster. He's really had a great run, obviously, in general in the last 4 years in WWE. 2 years in NXT UK, the amazing run he had there as champion, 2.5 years as champion. He goes over to NXT for a very brief bit, dominates there, comes to the main roster, wins the Intercontinental Championship, gets over, booked strongly, protected, main event of SmackDown, banger matches. I mean, the guy's been a real revelation in the last year. Him and Solo Sikoa have easily been the best 2 call-ups in a long fucking time. And that's not even close. Beyond Rhea and Bianca, on the whole. For men especially, Gunther and Solo in recent years, absolutely. What I said as soon as he went to Raw with the Intercontinental Championship, which I wasn't sure they were going to do, that he was automatically the top heel on the show. Because, who else did they even really have? Brock? I mean, Brock's not a full-timer, so he doesn't really count. Bronson Reed isn't remotely there yet. He's not nearly as over as Gunther is at this point. Or protected or feels as special or whatever. They just don't really have... I'm trying to... who else? What other heels does Raw have? The Miz? Give me a fucking break. I guess Judgment Day. They're going to try to push Priest, which is great. Balor's just not that guy, I don't think, unfortunately. But Gunther is. Gunther can be, and he is. I've said this before, and as other people have said, I feel like we are going to get Gunther and Brock at Mania for the World Heavyweight Championship. If Gunther is not champion, I've said this before as well, if Gunther is not World Heavyweight Champion within a year on this show, then something is seriously wrong. The guy should have the championship coming to him very, very soon, and he's great. So hopefully that happens on the sooner side because he's awesome. His second question, your thoughts on Mike Bailey. I think he's a great talent. He's definitely on the bland side personality-wise, and he also no-sells a lot of stuff in his matches. Overall, though, the guy's great. He has a lot of awesome matches. He's had a great run so far at Impact. Did a really good run as X Division champion. He's really a tremendous athlete and a great wrestler. The problem is that, again, he needs to improve the character stuff and the mic skills. It's not awful, but it just needs to be improved upon. But overall, he's a really, really good talent, and I really enjoy his work in Impact. His third question here, do you see War Games happening at Survivor Series this year, despite Vince McMahon being back? That's a good question. I do, because it doesn't sound like Vince has the overarching, control of creative. Maybe he will by that point. That's very possible. It sounds like right now Triple H makes all the big calls, and Vince either signs off on it or at least makes some changes. I don't think if Triple H wanted to do War Games, I don't think Vince would have... I don't know if he can say no or would say no. If Triple H has the bigger share of creative and the creative control, if that makes sense. So I'm going to say yes, they will do it again. If Vince has more power by that point, which is very, very possible, and honestly it's quite likely, then no, they won't. But if Triple H is still in the same role that he's in now, I still see them doing it, yes, at Survivor Series. I honestly wouldn't even do it at the same time every year. It was the same reason why Hell in the Cell did not feel special. You only do the match when it makes sense. I mean, AEW has done the match at the same time every year for a couple of years now, but it's not like they have a pay-per-view dedicated to it, And the matches they've done inside the cages have made sense. The ones they did inside War Games last year made sense, and even in NXT they made it make sense, but that was largely because Undisputed Era was around. Without Undisputed Era, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to do War Games unless you really have a blood feud to justify doing it. To do a men's one and a women's one, I'm all for doing women's War Games, but again, do them when they make sense, and not just because, it's War Games season, got to put the women in War Games, or put the men in War Games, even though it doesn't make sense. No, just bring it back when it makes sense to do so. It could be at SummerSlam, it could be on Raw or SmackDown, it doesn't really matter to me personally. Survivor Series is a fine place to do it. if they were going to do the multi-man elimination matches anyway, these aren't elimination style, but you get what I mean, that's fine. But hopefully by that point it means something. The matches inside the match, or the matches inside War Games, make sense. Bloodline or not. And hopefully Vince signs off on it. At Misdemeanor 6, final 2 questions from them here. First one being, do you see Pac coming back for AEW before All In or during the show? I do. Pac has been persona non grata since January. They lost the Trios Championships himself and the Lucha Bros, Death Triangle. And then we haven't seen him since. I assume it's visa issues, but he's been dealing with visa issues on and off now for fucking years. I know it's a COVID, pandemic thing as well. I get it. But he's literally been gone for 4 months. That's a really long time. I just think it's a case where AEW doesn't have any plans for him. I think it would be pretty shitty if he wasn't on that show. They have a lot of English, British talent on their roster. I mean, I wouldn't make a spot for Anthony fucking Ogogo at this point. He hasn't been on the show in ages. But, Pac is a big enough star. He's been around recently. He's been there since day one. He deserves to be on that show. Was he at All In? The first one? I don't think he was. I think they wanted him for that show, but then he didn't want to do it for whatever reason. He ended up going to AEW soon after, but when they started AEW. But I think they wanted him for All In, that first one, and they couldn't get him, or he didn't want to do it. I forgot why. He didn't come back to wrestling by that point. I don't really remember. But hopefully he is on that show. He is from that area. It would only make sense. I see him being back before then and not making a surprise return on the show, because that would be August. I mean, we're in May, and he hasn't been around for 4 months. I guess they could wait, but it's I think it would make more sense to promote him in a match for that show as opposed to having him return on the show. Because it's not like he's that big of a name, and it's not like he hasn't been in the company before. He's already on the roster. You might as well promote him in a match. And last question here. Can you see the Mogul Embassy feuding with House of Black, turning House of Black face? Yeah, I guess that makes sense. The Mogul Embassy, I believe, is Swerve Strickland and the Embassy. I don't know if Parker Boudreaux, or whatever his name is, and the tattooed-looking guy, I don't know if they're still in the group. From what Swerve said on Rampage, it sounds like they're not. He's like, oh, these guys are an upgrade. So it sounds like they're out. And Parker's terrible anyway. He's not remotely ready at all for television. Found that out pretty quickly. If that is the case, then good. But I could have sworn that Cage and Gates of Agony were going to be exclusive to Ring of Honor. And it's fine if they're doing double duty. I mean, Brian Cage apparently just signed a 5-year deal with AEW, Ring of Honor, probably for a decent amount of money if Cage was thinking about leaving and now he's staying. I'm all for him being in AEW and being with Swerve. I mean, it's a better fit than what he was doing with Parker and the other guy. But they're already the Ring of Honor World 6-Man Tag Team Champions. Will they also go for the 6-Man Tag Team Champions in AEW, the 6-Man Tag Team titles in AEW? I mean, maybe. Honestly, that's not really a feud that overly interests me. The AEW Trios division, I said for years they should do one. It feels like they did one at the worst possible time, because now they just don't have a lot of trios. They have the Elite. I mean, they have Jericho Appreciation Society, who fucking cares? I don't know. It doesn't really feel like the Trios division has really had any legs to it or any real juice. So, I mean, it would be a fine TV match, maybe even a pay-per-view match. I'm not saying the match would be bad. Swerve and Cage and Gates of Agony, or whatever combination that would be, them against House of Black would be a great match. Turning House of Black face, I mean, I guess their gimmicks is that they're heels. So to turn them baby faces, I mean, no shit, you could turn them face, but what I'm saying is their characters are kind of befitting of heels and not really so much baby faces. If they're going to be spitting in people's faces and the dark, spooky promos, it feels like they should be heels in that case. I just want to see them do more with House of Black in general. They really haven't done shit with them at all. Just period. Not even just lately, but really at all. They're the Trios champions, cool, but what does that even mean? They've been on the show a little bit more lately, but if the belts mean nothing, then again, who cares? So, is it a feud that has potential? Yeah. Is it a feud that really interests me? No. I'd rather see Swerve on his own doing single stuff than going for the fucking 6-Man tag team titles, to be completely honest with you. If you want to put Cage and the Gates of Agony in there with House of Black, that's fine. Swerve should be pushed on his own. I mean, the fact that he hasn't been already, I know he kind of broke away from Keith Lee months ago, but he hasn't done anything because he's barely been on the show. He's barely been on Dynamite. Rampage hardly counts. No one gives a fuck about Rampage. Swerve should be in the TNT title picture or doing something more significant. The Keith Lee feud is fine. It should have ended 6 months ago. It's a fine use of both guys, but they got to wrap it up and move on and move in different directions and move on to bigger and better things than what they're doing currently. And that's going to do it, guys, for episode, 494 of AskGSM here today for May 17th, 2023. Thank you guys, as always, for sending in the great questions. I appreciate it. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. If you want to send in a question to the show, you can do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/graham.gsm.matthews. Drop a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. Have an awesome one, guys. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.